Hi, I'm Andrew, and this is Blaster Breakdown. Today I'll show you a job I did for one of the guys in the Brisbane Area Nerf group, rewiring this Hyperfire to use the Worker Hyperfire kit. It's got a metal flywheel cage with metal wheels, Worker motors, using the stock pusher motor, but all running on 3S LiPo. I've also stuck a voltmeter up the front with a push button to activate it. Let's have a look inside. Here we are with the insides of the Hyperfire, plus all the bits from the Worker kit. So up the front here we've got the flywheels. This is the pusher conveyor belt mechanism that pushes darts forward. You can see the little notches there that pushes the dart into the flywheel cage. And the cog at the back, which is turned by these cogs that are attached to the pusher motor. The wiring from the flywheels at the front comes out here just near the trigger switch. We've got the mag release and the usual locks, physical and electronic, in place there. The rev trigger down the bottom here, and a bit of a control board with the battery terminals. The stock flywheel cage will be replaced with this metal one. There's a barrel out the front, fits in like so. This is a canted cage, so the motors are slightly angled. Got a dart feed there, and there you can see the angle, and so the wheels are slightly offset, and the idea is that imparts a little bit of spin to the darts, which should help with accuracy. These are the motors that come with the Worker kit. They're a high RPM, I think 40,000 RPM at 3S. There are two switches included in the kit, one for the rev switch and one's the firing trigger. You get some mounting screws for the motors, as well as this 3D printed mounting switch plate that sits behind the trigger and holds the trigger switch just right. This is the voltmeter that I'll install in the front, and I've got a momentary push switch that will turn the voltmeter on when it's held and obviously off when it's not. And I'll fit these in the front in this section here where there's plenty of space. So first things first, let's start taking this apart. I've exposed all the switches and wiring now, removing all the various cover plates and switch cover pieces and triggers here and there. At the front there's this electrical lock that will stop the flywheels from spinning if the pusher belt mechanism isn't locked in place. Here we've got the magazine lock that can go, and of course the firing trigger and the rev switch, both of which will keep the locations but replace the switches. So otherwise I can just begin pulling all these out. I'll just snip off the battery terminal connections, and the pusher motor is held down in this kind of frame with a few screws. And so all of this is now junk, and that can go in the bin. The trigger switch plate sits just in here. It does need a bit of work making space in the shell so that it will sit flat. It won't just click into place without a little bit of gentle persuasion. But that will then hold this switch around about here, one way or the other, and that'll be activated pulling the trigger, I think around that way, or maybe that way. And the rev trigger switch will fit down the bottom here, and so you just need to make space in the shell somewhere around here so that it'll be triggered correctly by pulling the rev trigger. And if I can, I'll reuse this cover piece to keep it all nice and neat. I've installed the motors and flywheels into the cage now. Blue and pink looks pretty nice. You can see the angle, and it's a 43.5mm motor spacing. And here's the work I've done inside the shell to fit the switches. The rev switch, first of all, I've cut down this ribbing to make space for the switch, and that fits in pretty nicely now. And for the main trigger switch plate, you can see here where I've made a bit of space in the ribbing on the inside so that this piece now fits in a bit tighter. Now I can begin reassembling the rev trigger section. We've got this manual lock, the correct trigger itself. The switch will fit in just about here, and then the covering plate I was able to use with just a little bit of modification, making a bit of space just underneath this screw hole. So now that sits over the top, that'll be screwed in place and holds the whole thing really neatly together, nice and secure. I thought it might be easier to show you how I wired this blaster up using this diagram. At the left we've got the flywheel motor as a pair. In the middle at the top we've got the pusher motor, then the trigger switch, and then the rev switch below at the bottom. And top right is the battery, which in our case is going to be a 3S LiPo. The first thing will be to connect the flywheels. So the positive lead from the battery will go to the normally open terminal on the rev switch. The common terminal will go to the flywheels, and then the negative side of the flywheels will go back to the negative terminal of the LiPo. Next we'll connect the common terminal from the rev switch to the normally open terminal of the trigger switch. That will ensure that the pusher motor can only get power if the flywheels are already spinning. The common tab of that switch then goes to the pusher motor, and the negative from that motor goes back to the negative of the LiPo. Next I'll connect the normally closed terminal from the trigger switch back to the negative terminal of the LiPo, and that will give us motor braking for the pusher motor. Essentially, when you release the firing trigger, the pusher motor will come to a quick stop. And finally, the voltmeter and push button switch up the front will connect to the positive and negative of the LiPo, only enabled when that switch is pressed. And lastly, to simplify things, we don't need 4 separate wires going back to the negative terminal of the battery. We'll join those all in together wherever is convenient and suitable. Let me know in the comments below if you found this sort of diagram helpful. And here we are with everything wired up. The positive lead from the battery goes to the rev switch, and then onto the firing trigger and onto the flywheels, and negative back the other way. The firing trigger switch goes to the pusher motor with the motor braking as described earlier. And I've reused this purple wire from the blaster and just ran it through the handguard and underneath the magazine well to the push button switch at the front here. That all gets covered up so it's out of the way. And of course that push button at the front completes the circuit to activate the voltmeter. Now I haven't wired up the XT60 connector yet, so I'm just going to test the circuit using these 4 AA's. Flywheels are spinning the right way. Pusher motor works. I'll just point out I replaced the switch underneath this little latch here. It provides a little more tension to hold the jam door and conveyor belt mechanism in place. And as you can see, the pusher motor is driving the belt in the right direction, and it brakes nicely when I release the trigger. I'll just show you on the other side how the voltmeter works. It might be a bit difficult to see in the light, but when I hold that button down, that's when we get a readout on the voltmeter. So I'm happy with the circuit, everything's working as expected, so I'll plug the 3S LiPo in and and see how it goes at full power. So only the XT60 connector to wire up now. Actually, there was one other thing I needed to do. This square shaped part of the flywheel cage protrudes a little bit, and I needed to trim down this ribbing on the left side of the shell to make space for that just there. And now the shell goes back together, no problems. Make sure the wires are sitting nice and flat. Don't forget your tack rail piece, very important. You can see the new barrel protrudes a little further out the front, so I've made space in that piece for the longer barrel to come through. And that's all done now. Let's get some Crony results now. Here's how it looks outside. Voltmeter is pretty smooth, pretty neat. I've got 25 worker red full lengths. I'll go single shots to start, then twos, and then just full auto for the rest of the drum. And there you go. I think that's about what we expected to see. And here we are down in the backyard. I'll be 50 feet from the target as usual. To start with, I'm not going to use the narrow metal barrel that goes at the front, just to see how accuracy looks. There's 25 red worker darts. Let's have a look. So about a third of those shots were whirlybirds, they didn't go anywhere, and as you can see the accuracy was a bit average. Next I've got 30 darts, and this time I am going to stick that metal barrel guide in the front. It's just sort of friction fit in there, not very secure, as we'll see. Well, there you go, no whirlybirds and much more consistent accuracy. I definitely recommend using that metal barrel. So there you have it. That's the Hyperfire with the Worker rewire kit, metal cage, metal flywheels, running on a 3S LiPo. Not a bad blaster for HVZ or even super stock events, with a pretty good rate of fire. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Leave any questions or comments below. I'll see you next time.